Good morning, learners, and welcome back to our second week of At Home with APS Summer Edition. We are working again this week on our writing skills. Remember, this is ELA, English Language Arts, for grades 3 through 5. And last week, we started working on narrative writing. Remember, you worked on your SCAR story with Miss Abby. You created your 6-pane story. And we talked about so many things last week. With the 6-pane story, you drew some illustrations. And then we talked about transitions. How do we move between those panes to create a story? Along with that, we also added dialogue. Do you remember what that word means, dialogue? Can you say that into your TV? Did you say it means speaking? If you did, that's absolutely right. So dialogue is when 2 or more characters are speaking in your story. And that helps create interest around those characters. And it also helps us to know those characters better. Remember, when you're reading a story and there's dialogue, you change paragraphs and your brain just sort of understands that that's a new character speaking. Sometimes your author doesn't even tell you that. So dialogue is a really interesting way to create interest in a story. But all of these terms that we talked about last week, I got home and I will tell you what, I thought, wow, that was a lot of information. And so I needed a way to keep that information available so that I could remember what we learned. Because you don't always remember things the first time. And I know for me, it's really helpful to write things down. So last week, remember we worked on vocabulary. On Monday and Wednesday, we learned 4 new words. We also worked on word study with Miss Abby, and we did that on Tuesday and Thursday. And then we actually read some great stories, and we talked about our dictionary. So we talked about how to develop that story with a plot. So let me show you how I decided to organize my writing journal so that I could keep that information available when I needed it. So you can see I found a spiral notebook, right? Just a spiral notebook at home, and it was just a single subject one. Remember, you could also create a writing journal with just sheets of paper, inside some cardboard, maybe with some construction paper on top. So if you've created yours that way, that's perfectly fine also. And then if you remember Miss Abby's journal, it was small and it was really fun, and she put stickers on the front. So anything that you have for a writing journal is great. I want to make sure that you like your writing journal. It's really fun to have something that you feel proud of to take out, and that makes you want to write in it, and it makes you want to use it also. So here's mine. Like I said, I just took a spiral notebook, and you can see from the edge, it used to be purple. Purple was hard for me to decorate because it was really dark. So I took a sheet of construction paper, I put it on the top, and I just decorated it with some stickers. So that kind of just makes it my own. Then I thought, well, how am I going to keep my things straight? Because we did vocabulary, we did dictionary, we did some word study, and then the writing part of it. So I found some index cards, and I made some tabs. You can kind of see those on the side here. So let's take a look at my first tab, which is vocabulary. Vocabulary were the new words that we learned. And if you remember, we did them using a Frayer model. And a Frayer model is just a fancy word for a diagram for your vocabulary. And so the Frayer model kind of looks like this. And if you have, let me move it down a little bit so you can see it. And so the word goes in the middle, And then I have the definition, the sentence, the synonyms, and I didn't finish my homework because I didn't do the illustration yet. But that's the fun part, so I'm saving that for later. And so we had 2 words on Monday, mortify and presume. And then we had 2 words on Tuesday, expel and scoff. And look at my last one. I have some work to do, don't I? And that's fine, because sometimes when we're working, we go a little too quickly and you're not able to get it all down. But at least put the word down, and then you can go back and fill out your model later. All right? Thumbs up on that one? Awesome. Let's take a look at the dictionary that I did, because we learned a lot of terms last week. And not only did we learn a lot of terms, we also created a diagram. So do you remember the plot diagram that we created? Remember, it started out with the introduction, and then you had rising action, and then you had that high tension, the point of no return, the falling action, and then the resolution. So I just drew that in my dictionary because sometimes that helps trigger your brain when you go to write, like, oh no, now I'm in the introduction. So that helps you see it. But I also wrote a definition of plot, which was how a story is structured. Another term we had was characters. We also had setting, and then we went down to dialogue. So we had a lot of terms last week that we talked about that related to the story that you're writing and the books that you're reading. I also have a tab for word study that you did with Miss Abby. And we talked about adding the ending ed to certain words. And then on Thursday, she talked about the long E, the EA sounds, and how they can be different in different words. One thing I wanted to point out to you is when I do things like this, when I take notes, I love to put the date down of when we did it. And I made a mistake here. You can see I crossed it out, but this one was on Tuesday, and this one was on Thursday. And that just helps. It also helps with your writing to go back, and sometimes you can remember what day you did it, and you can go back and quickly see it. And then finally, we have the writing journal tab. So that's where you're going to have your SCAR story that you recorded. All right, so I hope you have a reading note, a writing journal that you can keep close to you and use as we go along. I do want to remind you that if you've missed any of our episodes, they are uploaded on YouTube. And once the episode plays for the day, it goes up to our YouTube channel. So if you've missed anything, you can go back and watch those. And sometimes that's helpful if you feel like we're going a little too quickly or you didn't catch something, you can go back and replay it on YouTube. Yes, all right. So let's get started on our work for today. We're gonna continue on our writing fictional narratives this week. So last week we kind of did your real story, right? Your SCAR story that actually happened. This week we're gonna move a little bit into the fictional part of it and talk about what makes up fiction. Miss Abby's gonna come up and talk to you about that in a little bit. But before she does, it's Monday, so I wanted to work on our vocabulary words. So every day, Monday and Wednesday, each time we do vocabulary, we're gonna have 2 words. So you could prep your writing journal for those days and know that you have to draw 2 of the models that we will fill in as we go. If you do that, you'll be ready for the show when we start. If that doesn't work, you can take notes as we go. All right, let me show you our first picture, which is so cool. What does this look like to you? Say it into your TV. Look at those eyes. Did you say an owl? If you did, that's absolutely right. So our owl has these eyes. And what are these eyes? They look like they're looking right into you, don't they? And so our word that looks at our owl's eyes and reminds us of what our owl is seeing is keen. Say that with me. Keen. Keen. We have a double E, don't we? Long E. Keen. The word keen is an adjective. That's the part of speech. So that means it helps describe a noun. Keen. Our owl has keen eyesight. He can see everything. So I'm going to put our vocabulary word up on my Frayer Model chart, just like that. Now we need a definition. What do you think are some good words that match our owl? What are some synonyms? Remember, synonyms mean words that are the same. What are some good synonyms for keen? An owl sees everything, doesn't it? Do you think they're sharp? They look pretty sharp to me. They also look really intelligent. You know that he's seeing and he's looking and he's thinking about food, what he can scoop up, right? They also look perceptive. Ooh, that's a big word. Perceptive means he can sort of see it and remember it and know what it means. If he sees something move, he knows that might be food. So our definition that I came up with, and you can put it in your own words, is highly developed. Our owl has a keen eyesight. It's highly developed eyesight. He can see everything that's going on. He or she, right? So that's our word keen. I have one more word for you today. We're going to take a look at this picture. So we have, he looks like a racer, right? It looks like he might be in the wheelchair Olympics. And he's raising his arms up. And when we do that, have you ever run a race at school? And you come in or you finish the race and you think, I am triumphant. Say that with me. Triumphant. That's a great word. Triumphant. Let's spell that together because that has a PH sound in it that sounds like an F. So it's T-R-I, try, U-M-P-H-A-N-T, triumphant. So if I can make it a little bit clearer for you to see. Triumphant. Say that with me again. Triumphant. Say it low. Triumphant. Say it high. Triumphant. I like it loud though, right? Triumphant. All right, let's take our word, and that is also an adjective. Triumphant. An adjective, so it describes a noun. I'm going to put my new word up there. It's a little bit longer, isn't it? Triumphant. What does it mean if you're triumphant? It means you've had success, right? You're very, very happy with what's happened. Triumphant. It means you maybe, for you in your mind, you had a victory. Victory, that's a great word. Maybe it means you win. So my definition, or our definition, is having won a battle or a contest. You're triumphant. You've overcome. Maybe you did really well on your math test and you got a good score, and that's a triumph for you, right? You get your test back, you felt really triumphant. Maybe you wrote an incredible story and you read it and somebody in your house says, wow, that was really well developed. Your plot structure was great. You feel triumphant. Maybe you finished a book that you're reading. That also is a triumphant. So think of some synonyms for triumphant. I gave you some. So I'd like you to put some synonyms there. What about something that's opposite, an antonym? So the opposite of triumphant, maybe unsuccessful. You didn't quite succeed at what you were trying to do. So if you think of some synonyms and some antonyms, and then a sentence. How could you be triumphant? How are you triumphant in your life? We've all had triumph, right? And then an illustration, maybe of the triumph that you had. All right, so those are our vocabulary words for today. And if you didn't get them, remember you can go back to our YouTube channel after this episode airs. And we're going to continue our fictional stories.
Hello, learners. I'm Miss Abby, and I'm so happy that you are back for week 2. Last week, we talked about narrative writing. And this week, we're going to talk about narrative writing again. But we're going to add a little bit to it. To remind you, our essential question anchors us. It reminds us, what are we studying? What are we learning? So last week and this week again, we are going to use this essential question to anchor us. The question asks, how do authors use narrative elements to write a story? Narrative elements, character, setting, plot. Our stories last week, both in reading and in writing, had those elements. Well, this week they will too. Now, behind me, this is just to help you remember what narratives are. A narrative is a spoken or written account of real or fictitious events as a story. Fictitious. What a great word. Fictitious. What are elements of a story or a narrative? Character. All stories or narratives will have characters. The characters can be human, animal, real, fictitious. All narratives will have a setting, a place where the story takes place. Setting can be time. It can also be a location. This setting is on a beach, on a coast. All stories will also have a plot. A plot, very simply, is the beginning, middle, and end. Last week, we studied this story mountain that started with the background, the rising action, the climax, the falling action, and then the resolution. All narratives have these elements in them. Last week, we wrote a narrative that had real characters, a real setting, and a real event. That was called a personal narrative. This week, we're going to study fictional narratives. Fictional narratives are fake or imagined stories. The characters can be fictional. The setting can be fictional. The plot can be fictional. What I mean by this is the character can be someone or something that you imagined. The setting can be a place that is imagined. If it happens in the future, that is imagined. The plot, when you tell what happened in the story, that can be fictional too. How can you tell if a story is fiction? Well, there will be magic. There could be talking animals. There might be superpowers. It might be a fairy tale. If I hear once upon a time at the beginning of a story, I know that it's a fictional narrative. If there are characters inside that do not really exist, I know that it's a fictional narrative. If something magical happens, I know that it's a fictional narrative. So this week, we are going to be reading stories and writing stories that have fictional or imagined parts of them. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to use a lot of your creativity.
I'm so excited about this, Miss Abby. Fiction is my very favorite, and I have to tell you that your Slide of Charlotte's Web, one of my favorite books of all time.
Mine too.
If you haven't read Charlotte's Web, that's going to be a really good one to put on your reading list.
Definitely. So now you have a story for us that is filled with fiction.
Absolutely.
All righty. I'm going to scoop
Thank you, Miss
behind
Abby.
you.
I wanted to share with you, learners, a book that's a little bit different than our normal books that we read. This hopefully will trigger some of your imagination. You're going to see some beautiful photographs, and there's kind of a mystery involved. So let's take a look at this book. Our book today is called The Mysteries of Harris Burdick. And our author is Chris Van Allsburg. The book was published by Houghton Mifflin. So like I said, this story is a little bit different, and it starts out with kind of a mysterious setting. This is a note from the author, so I'm going to read it to you. Introduction. I first saw the drawings in this book a year ago in the home of a man named Peter Wenders. Though Mr. Wenders is retired now, he once worked for a children's book publisher, choosing the stories and pictures that would be turned into books. 30 years ago, a man called at Mr. Wenders' office, introducing himself as Harris Burdick. Mr. Burdick explained that he had written 14 stories and had drawn many pictures for each one. He brought with him just one drawing from each story to see if Mr. Wenders liked his work. Peter Wenders was fascinated by the drawings. He told Burdick he would like to read the stories that went with them as soon as possible. The artist agreed to bring the stories the next morning. He left the 14 drawings with Wenders, but he did not return the next day, dun dun dun, or the day after that. Harris Burdick was never heard from again. Over the years, Mr. Wenders tried to find out who Burdick was and what had happened to him, but he discovered nothing. To this day, Harris Burdick remains a complete mystery. His disappearance is not the only mystery left behind. What were the stories that went with these drawings? There are some clues. Mr. Burdick had written a title and a caption for each drawing. When I told Peter Wenders how difficult it was to look at the drawings and their captions without imagining a story, he smiled and left the room. He returned with a dust-covered cardboard box. Inside were dozens of stories, all inspired by the Burdick drawings. They had been written years ago by Wenders' children and their friends. I spent the rest of my visit reading these stories. They were remarkable. Some bizarre, some funny, some downright scary. In the hope that other children will be inspired by them. The Burdick drawings are reproduced here for the first time. Chris Van Allsburg, Providence, Rhode Island. So let's take a look at these pictures, and I want you to keep in mind what Miss Abby told you about fiction. It may have some magic, it may have animals that talk, but it has something that we create in our imaginations, right? We create a story. So let's look at the first one. And this is a picture of a little boy laying in bed, and you see these little spots of light that are coming in his window. The caption is, Archie Smith, Boy Wonder. A tiny voice asked, is he the one? Does that create an image or a story in your mind? Wow, you could take off and write about that, couldn't you? Let's take a look at the next one. This one is kind of mysterious. The title is Under the Rug. And the caption, 2 weeks passed and it happened again. What do we have? Can you see it? There's a bump under his rug. And it came 2 weeks ago and now it's back. What could it be? Well, he looks like he's not very happy about it, is he? This is a beautiful drawing. It's called A Strange Day in July as the title. And it shows a picture of 2 children. And they're skipping rocks. Have you ever done that? You find a really flat rock and you throw it in the water and it kind of skips. Well, the caption on this one is, he threw with all his might, but the 3rd stone came skipping back. Meaning it skipped out, and then it skipped back. There must be a story there, right? Is it magic? I love this one. You can see it, it's a little bit dark, but we have buildings on either side, and right in the middle, we have a huge ship. And the title is Missing in Venice. So Venice is a city in Italy, and the city's very unique because it's all built on a canal, which means that you ride boats called gondolas around the city. You don't drive your car. So the caption is, even with her mighty engines in reverse, the ocean liner was pulled further and further into the canal. And you can see it's already toppling one of the buildings. So what's going on? That'd be a great story to write. This one is captioned Another Place, Another Time. And we see a group of children. And they look like they're on one of those railroad cars that you move along the railroad track. But look, it goes out into the ocean. And what's really interesting about this one is way over here in the corner, I see a castle. Castles are fabulous things to write about because lots of stuff can go on there. The caption for this one is, if there was an answer, he'd find it. So they're looking for something, maybe a treasure. This one is really cool too. So if you can see, it looks like a leg and a foot coming down a stairs. And then a little door here. Looks like it could be in the basement. I see skates hanging and some storage things here. Something rolled up right here. Don't know what that is. And the caption is, uninvited guests. Guests that haven't been invited to your house. And the caption is, his heart was pounding. He was sure he had seen the doorknob turn. Dun, dun, dun. What could be coming in? This is absolutely one of my favorites. I love this drawing. Do you see how beautiful it is? It's like a magic island, isn't it? So that's got one of our pieces of fiction magic that Miss Abby told you about. And you can see over here, very small, is a little boy. And it looks like his dog. And here in the foreground, we have a harp, a music instrument. And it's titled The Harp. The caption is, "So he thought it's really true." So a story could be, how did he get there? What's he going to do next? Lots of places to go with that one to write a story. How has this ever happened to you? It looks like this young lady was reading a story. She left her lamp on, so she fell asleep as she was reading it, laying in bed, and look at the book. Suddenly, vines are growing out of it. Reminds me kind of Jack and the Beanstalk. It's titled Mr. Linden's Library, and the caption is, "He had warned her about the book. Now it was too late." Oof, that's got some good stories too, doesn't it? This one's really fun. This one is titled The 7 Chairs. And look, we have two, it looks like it's set in a cathedral, probably a cathedral in France, is my guess. It looks like we have two sort of clergymen down here, and we have a nun who's sitting in a chair floating. The caption is, "The 5th one ended up in France." So you could go two directions if you were to write a story about this. Where are the other 6 chairs? Where did they go? Or you could write about this one. Why is she floating? Lots of cool stories there. Don't you wish you had a floating chair? This one is entitled The 3rd Floor Bedroom. And look, we have some wallpaper with birds on it. And we have a window that looks like it's open because the curtain is blowing. But in case you didn't look closely enough, right here, we have a bird that's starting to come off of the wallpaper and fly away. And the caption for this one is, "It all began when someone left the window open." Wow, do you think that's magic wallpaper? It looks like it to me. This one is called Just Dessert. And we see a lady, looks like she's going to carve a jack-o'-lantern, right? A pumpkin here that's glowing. And the caption is, "She lowered the knife and it grew even brighter." It looks to me like that pumpkin does not want to become a jack-o'-lantern. It must be something very special. So you can see how those elements of magic are here. This one is titled Captain Tory. And he's holding a lamp, right? A lantern out onto the water. He's looking out into the water, and he's got a little boy next to him. And the caption is, "He swung his lantern 3 times, and slowly the schooner appeared." So this ship is called a schooner, and it wasn't there before. Where did it come from? From the past? This one is titled Oscar and Alphonse. And it's a beautiful picture of a young lady. And it's captioned, "She knew it was time to send them back. The caterpillar softly wiggled in her hand, spelling out goodbye." And my favorite, the house on Maple Street. Oh my goodness, this house is going to take off. Did you guys just watch the rocket, the NASA rocket take off? The astronauts who went into the space station? The caption is, "It was a perfect liftoff." So you can see this book really tries to inspire your imagination and get you thinking about stories that you could write. So next up, we have Miss Abby, who's going to join again and work on some fictional writing with you. She's going to practice those elements of fiction, right? Some magic, maybe some talking animals, some other things that are creative. Remember, fiction is a story that's not true. Not fiction, which you wrote last week with your SCAR stories, were stories that were true. So let's focus on things that are make-believe and made up, and use your imagination this week. Miss Abby's going to be up here shortly to work through that with you.
Hi, writers. It is now my favorite part of the segment, when I get to write with you. Whenever I'm writing, I like to get ideas. I have experienced students saying, I don't know what to write. Have you ever felt that way? Well, the book that Mrs. Kraft just read to us was filled, teeming, overflowing with ideas for writing. So I'm going to let one of these pages inspire me to write a fictional narrative. We keep saying that word fictional. Fictional is not real. Fictional is fake. Fictional is imagined. So we are going to write a make-believe story today. We're going to use this book to inspire us. In the introduction that Miss Mary read, it says, I hope that other children will be inspired by them. It says it right there. The hope is that you will want to write a story based on some of these interesting illustrations. We will put them on our APS website so that you can see these illustrations to write from them. So as I am writing, I have to start by organizing my ideas. Some writers, they just get started. It's called a flash draft. They just write their ideas down. It helps me organize my ideas first before I start writing. In my writer's notebook, let me show you my cover again. In my writer's notebook, I've started a fresh page. And this is the graphic organizer that I like to use when I'm writing a narrative. A graphic organizer, graphic means pictures or drawings, and organizer is how I get my thoughts together before I turn them into words. When I wrote my SCAR story last week, that was a real story, a personal narrative. This is what my organizer ended up looking like. When I put all of this work into my organizer, it helped me create pages of story. So today, we are going to use this same organizer to create a fictional narrative. Now, I wanted to connect a few ideas with you. When I make my graphic organizer, the first thing I do is I make 6 boxes that are pretty similar in size. I make sure to add some spaces between my boxes. This is important because I put notes between my boxes. The next thing I'd like you to do is number them. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, number 5, and lastly, number 6. If you've noticed, I've made my scene or my box number 4 a little special. I've added an extra color over the box so that I can remember that scene or box number 4 is my climax. That is my most exciting part of my story, my point of no return. To connect this to our plot diagram that we talked about last week, I want to add a few words to this. Box number 1 is called my introduction. That is one long word with a lot of different parts. Introduction. Introduction. I'm going to write that above my box here. Introduction. Now, scene number 2 is going to be rising. Rising means it's beginning to get interesting. Box number 3 is also rising. The action is getting a little bit more intense. Scene number 4 will be my pivotal moment, my climax, my point of no return. And then scene 5 is called my falling action. Falling just means it's getting less exciting and it's going toward my ending. My ending can be called 2 things, conclusion or resolution. They have similar meanings to them. I will write resolution, which just means we're kind of back to normal. I wanted to connect these boxes to a visual for you. Scene 1, scene 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Scenes 2 and 3 are rising up, and scene 5 is falling. Scene 6 is my resolution, and scene 1 is my introduction that gives all the background information. Introduction. So I'm going to use an idea to inspire me from the Mysteries of Harris Burdick. While Mrs. Kraft was reading, I heard one that I thought, I want to write about that. I hope you felt that way too. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. I wanted to write about this. It's called Under the Rug. And the text says, 2 weeks passed and it happened again. I see there's a lot of information in this illustration. This is fictional. This is from someone's imagination. I notice a main character, but more importantly, I notice something under the rug. This is where I'm going to use my imagination to imagine what is under the rug. What are some things that could be under the rug? It could be a cat. It could be a rat. It could be something totally imagined. It could be a fairy king. It could be a smorgasbord. That's totally imagined. It's up to you, writer. What could be under this rug? What do you think could be under this rug? Whatever it is, it sure is frustrating our main character here. He looks like he's about to get violent. He wants to smash whatever is under the rug. Well, if he wants to smash it, that must mean that he's afraid of it. I notice it's almost knocking over the table. The lamp, can we see that? There we go. The lamp is almost knocking over the table. So there is something under the rug here. And we have our main character and the setting. Where does this look like it is taking place? I would guess it's happening in the main character's apartment. I'm just going to make that up. First, I have to give my character a name. How about Henry? So what I'm going to do in my notebook, is I'm going to write a story for Under the Rug. I'm going to imagine a name for my character. You can imagine a different name because these are fictional. These are imagined stories. My character is going to be named Henry. Henry. My setting will be Henry's apartment. And I don't think this takes place in the past or in the future, so it'll be called present day. I'm imagining this could happen at any time around now. Present day. The problem, this is silly, I just imagined this. There is a sweet kitten who wants to live with Henry. The problem is, Henry doesn't know that it's a sweet kitten. He thinks it's something dangerous. So now I need to turn my ideas into a story. There is a sweet kitten who wants to live with Henry. The setting is in Henry's apartment, present day, and the character is Henry, and I need to make a name for my sweet kitten. How about Carla? Carla is my sweet kitten. I'll put little whiskers. And since it's fictional, Carla the kitten can talk. We'll see if I can make that work. So I'm going to go back to my planner, and I'm just going to start imagining what's going to happen. So my rising action right before the point of no return, I'm going to kind of recreate this scene in my notebook. At this point, there is a rug, and Carla the kitten is hanging out underneath that rug. We have our character Henry. Oh, Henry is mad. And he's got a chair above his head. He is about to hit Carla, the kitten, because he doesn't know. Because 2 weeks passed, and it happened again. I have my transition right there. 2 weeks passed and it happened again. He's about to, and then I have to have my point of no return. What would you like to have happen in this scene? Yes, Henry could smush the kitten. That could happen. Henry could drop the chair. There's a lot of different things that can happen with our imaginary characters. But I'm going to have Carla, the kitten, expose herself. She's going to come out from under the carpet looking very cute. And she's going to say, Henry, wait. So I have my little kitten right here, and then I have Henry, and I need to decide, how will Henry feel when he sees that there's been a kitten in his apartment? Will his heart get happy? Will he get frustrated? Will he be confused? I think he's going to be happy. I think his heart is going to warm up. That's his heart. A kitten. So I have my climax here. Henry wasn't sure what was hiding, and it turns out to be a kitten. What is going to happen next? I think I'm going to make Henry keep the kitten. So Henry is going to, how about he builds the kitten a nice home, a nice spot? He's going to give some water bowls and some food bowls for the kitten, and one of those little cat scratcher towers so the kitten can live there. And on the top of the tower, I'm going to have my kitten Carla smiling. And Henry's going to smile and feel a lot of love for his new companion. In the end, I'll talk about how Henry had no idea he was missing such a great friend. So 10 years later, now, if you're looking, I'm building this story in kind of a peculiar way. I started with scene 3. That's where I imagined this part of the story is happening. Then I pictured the climax, a kitten. Then I show that Henry is starting to really become fond of this kitten. He's no longer alone. And in the end, he finds the best friend he never knew he wanted. So I need to build a little bit before that. Maybe Henry's reading a book and he hears something. Scratch, scratch. Then 2 weeks later, it happens again. For my introduction, I'm going to introduce my character, Henry. He's lonely, lives by himself, and maybe he's even a little grumpy. So this is a story of how when love enters your life, maybe with a pet or a best friend or a family member, you're not so grumpy anymore. Tomorrow, I am going to turn my writing, my organizer, into actual writing. At home, I'd like you to go ahead and build a graphic organizer to organize your ideas. You can visit our website to see these images so that you can be inspired by one. I hope you're starting to see that writing is a very creative process that doesn't have to be so intimidating. So for tonight, while you're reading, look at some of the books that you have at home. Maybe you're reading them online. See if they have elements of fiction in them. Do they have magic? Do they have characters that don't really exist? In the book, James and the Giant Peach, there's a talking caterpillar, a talking ladybug, a talking spider. In Harris Burdick, there's magic. In Harry Potter, there's so much magic. We hope you have a great week of learning with us. Please visit us at the APS website, watch our videos on YouTube, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for learning with us at home at APS.